Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Golden Blooded is a college football YouTube channel for entertainment. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into our next college football video. Don't forget to send gear to represent your team. The address is P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. The SEC Big 12 Challenge in college basketball happened yesterday, and the more I look at it, maybe they should have just ended this, like canceled it, made it not happen, because the Big 12 flat out embarrassed the SEC. Final record was Big 12 with 7 wins, SEC just 3 wins. 0 road SEC teams won a game. 2 road Big 12 teams won a game. That was Kansas and Texas Tech. So the Big 12 really dominated the SEC in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. The first game was number 2 Alabama at Oklahoma. Of course, Oklahoma blows out Alabama. They didn't just beat them, they blew them out. 93-69, and Oklahoma is not one of the better teams in the Big 12. Grant Sherfield was the leading scorer with 30 points. So Alabama drops to 18-3, and now Oklahoma moves up to 12-9. Yeah, they're not a very good team, but they flat out embarrassed Alabama. Alabama has dominated college football, and it looks like Alabama's getting really, really good in college basketball as well. So the evil empire is looking to capture more areas of college athletics. Well, yesterday, Oklahoma put a bump in the road for mighty Alabama. The next game was number 10 Texas at number 4 Tennessee. Tennessee actually beat Texas pretty convincingly, 82-71. Tennessee moves up to 18-3. Texas moves down to 17-4. The leading scorer, really don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Nkamhoua. 27 points, good game, and Tennessee takes care of business against Texas. And Texas was one of the better teams in the Big 12, a top 10 team. The next game was Florida at number 5, Kansas State. This was a mismatch. Everybody knew who was going to win this game, and that's exactly what happened. Kansas State whooped Florida 64-50. Low-scoring game, though. Kansas moves up to 18-3. Florida moves down to 12-9. Leading scorers both have 13 points, so nothing to brag about there. But Kansas State gives the Big 12 another win, but that one was an easy win for the Big 12. The next game was 2 blue bloods going at it. Number 9, Kansas at Kentucky. Kansas all over Kentucky, 77-68. Kansas moves up to 17-4. Kentucky moves down to 14-7. Jalen Wilson with 22 points. Oscar Tshiebwe was the leading scorer for Kentucky, but it was not enough. Kansas all over Kentucky, and it looks like the winningest college basketball program is getting off their losing streak. I think they were on like a 3-game losing streak. That is snapped when they went on the road and beat Kentucky. The next game was number 11 TCU at Mississippi State. The underdog actually won this game. I wasn't sure what the point spread was, but as far as who the better team was, the lesser team won this game. Mississippi State won in overtime, 81-74. TCU drops to 16-5. Mississippi State up to 13-8. Tola Smith, leading scorer, 27 points. So this was something that hurt the Big 12. One of their better teams goes on the road and loses to a lesser team. The next game, the same thing happens as well. Number 12, Iowa State goes on the road and loses to Missouri, 78-61. Iowa State moves down to 15-5. Missouri up to 16-5. But I think Missouri is better than people realize. I think they will be ranked, especially after beating Iowa State. Leading scorer was Kobe Brown, who had 20 points. And once again, a Big 12 team goes on the road and loses to a lesser SEC team. But I'm telling you, SEC needed every win they could get because it's all downhill after this. Next game, number 15, Auburn goes on the road and loses to West Virginia 80-77. They were getting blown out there for a minute, but Auburn came marching back. And I actually did a video on the last minute of that game, and I was definitely sweating out that last minute. But West Virginia does prevail, 80-77. Eric Stevenson goes off on Auburn. 31 points, was the leading scorer, and we needed every point he put out there. So hopefully Eric Stevenson stays hot, and West Virginia can stay hot headed into the Big 12 tournament and the Big Dance. I do think West Virginia makes the Big Dance probably as a 6th or 7th seed as of right now. As they compile on some wins, they can move up their seeding. The next game was Arkansas on the road to number 17, Baylor. Baylor wins, but only by 3 points, 67-64. Arkansas moves down to 14-7. Baylor moves up to 16-5. Ricky Council, who was a player for Arkansas, was actually the leading scorer with 25 points. So Baylor pulls off a squeaker of a win over Arkansas. And Arkansas is a decent team, but I was expecting Baylor to actually blow out Arkansas. So that was a good showing by Arkansas. Nothing to hang your heads on that one. The next game is Texas Tech on the road to LSU. This was one of the road wins for the Big 12. The other one, of course, I've already talked about, and that was Kansas. Texas Tech goes on the road and beats LSU 76-68. Texas Tech, one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the Big 12, they move up to 11-10, so they are one game above 500, and LSU drops to 12-9. So the worst team in the Big 12 goes on the road and beats, not one of the better teams in the SEC, but still, they beat them on the road. That's saying something. Kevin Abonner led the scoring with 22 points. That was a much, much needed win for Texas Tech. I think they were on a 7-game losing streak. Maybe they can build some momentum off of that. And finally, the last game was Ole Miss on the road to Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State absolutely destroys Ole Miss. This was kind of a throwaway game because neither one of these teams were very good. Now, Oklahoma State is a good team, but they're not one of the better teams in the Big 12. Ole Miss drops to 9-12. Oklahoma State jumps up to 12-9. And Khalid Boone was the leading scorer with 18 points. So, complete domination by the Big 12 over the SEC. Final record was Big 12, 7 wins, SEC 3 wins, like I mentioned earlier. This was not a good look for the SEC, especially with number 2 Alabama going on the road and getting absolutely smoked. I will say this, what did help the SEC was Mississippi State beating one of our best teams, TCU, at home. And also Missouri beating one of our best teams, Iowa State, at home. So that helps. But also, 2 of their home teams lost, and one of them lost to a lesser team, in my opinion. LSU losing to Texas Tech at home. That's not a good look for the SEC at all. And then, of course, even though Kansas is the better team between them and Kentucky, that was a high-profile game. It was on national television. And, of course, Kansas basically whooped Kentucky on the road. It was not a home game for Kansas. It was on the road. So, also not a good look for the SEC. So, we'll see how these 2 conferences finish the regular season. The Big 12 is expected to finish as a strong conference again. Maybe the bottom tier teams can get it together as well. I'm talking about my team, West Virginia, Texas Tech, who hasn't won a Big 12 game, Oklahoma State, not a very good team in the Big 12, and Oklahoma, who just beat number 2 Alabama. Maybe those 4 teams can get hot, and maybe the Big 12 can put the vast majority of the conference into the big dance. I think right now we're looking at least 6 teams, maybe 7 teams out of a 10-team conference making it into the big dance. Remember, the record was set by the Big East. I believe it was back in 2011. 11 out of their 16 members made the big dance. So technically, by the math, the Big 12 as of this year cannot break their record because there's only 10 members in the conference. But they could break the record as far as the percentage of their conference getting into the big dance. We'll see what happens. So y'all let me know in the comments section, were you surprised at how dominant the Big 12 was over the SEC in this Big 12 SEC Challenge? Number 2, were you surprised that Missouri was able to beat Iowa State and Mississippi State was able to beat TCU? Those were 2 of the Big 12's better team. And what about West Virginia beating Auburn, who was definitely one of the better teams in the SEC? Which one of these games surprised you the most? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.